It's so important also that we know that when someone wins the Nobel Peace Prize, they didn't win it because they have the right gender or skin color or political leanings. We know they won because they are a true peace champion, having, fulfilled all the criteria of a peace champion.
Hello and welcome to Reasoned UK with me, Darren Grimes. If you enjoyed today's show, which I'm absolutely certain you will because it is an absolutely fascinating topic, please do consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell and supporting our GoFundMe page if you're in a position to do so. Now, the express aim of the founder of the Nobel Prize, Alfred Nobel, was to confer the award to the person who shall have done the most or the best work for fraternity between the nations and the abolition or reduction of standing armies and the formation and spreading of peace congresses. And since 1901, when the first prize was awarded, the Nobel Peace Prize has unquestionably been the most prestigious, coveted award in the world, conferring a sort of quasi-saint-like status on its recipients. The 1984 winner, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who richly deserved the prize, quipped, "No sooner had I got the Nobel Peace Prize than I became an instant oracle." But is the Nobel Peace Prize all that it's cracked up to be? Here are some facts to just consider. Gandhi, who was arguably the most deserving statesman of his age, was nominated 5 times for the Peace Prize and never won it. Arguably, President Trump, he promoted fellowship among nations via the Abraham Accords between Israel and its Arab nations, bringing back American troops from abroad, and peace negotiations between Serbia and Kosovo. And that was all within a 1-year time frame, yet he didn't stand a chance. So like everything else, has this prize just become a sort of politicised poison chalice? Well, joining me to discuss is the Norwegian-born Unni Turrettini, who has degrees from, very clever lady, degrees from Norway, France, the United States, a member of the New York Bar. She's worked for numerous years in law and finance in Paris, France, Geneva, Switzerland, and her new book, Betraying the Nobel, The Secrets and Corruption Behind the Nobel Peace Prize, link in the description there, folks, is quite the eye-opening revelation. Hi, Unni.
Hi, Darren. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
What's it like then in Oslo at the moment? Are you sort of locked down or what?
Well, no, we're not. We're not locked down. We're quite a small country, so we have space here. It's a big geographical country, but we're not that many people, so we're doing quite all right. But still, a lot of the restaurants are closed.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to socialize much. Kids are, partly homeschooled, so it's a different, and we can't travel. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Unni, could I first of all have you sort of give the story of why Alfred Nobel established the Nobel Prize, because it's a great story, and who are, if you could as well, just reflect on who some of the most notable winners of the prize actually are.
He was Swedish originally, but he spent a lot of his childhood and growing up in St. Petersburg in Russia. He spoke 5 languages fluently. He had, at the end of his life, when he died in 1896, he had 355 patents for his inventions, and he was most notably known for inventing dynamite. So he became extremely wealthy, was one of the most successful and wealthiest businessmen of his time. And he, some people believe that he established a peace prize for out of guilt, to counteract for his invention of dynamite. But Alfred Nobel actually never saw his inventions, any of his inventions, as anything as a betterment to humanity. He was an idealist. He really wanted dynamite to be used for, and it was used for infrastructure, building roads, tunnels, and it was definitely used for that. And it wasn't not very practical as a weapon because it's quite unstable still. So Alfred Nobel was an idealist, and he lacked a bit of social skills. He was a bit of a nerd, if you will, and he never married, never had any children. And so he didn't know, he didn't, but all of his money, he didn't want it to go to just anything. He didn't have any kids to leave it to. So he wanted it to make a difference after he passed away and for his legacy to continue. And so that's why he established actually 5 Nobel Prizes: physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and then peace. The Peace Prize was the only one who's not been given out by Swedish institutions. In his last will, Alfred Nobel gave the Peace Prize to the Norwegian Parliament, and for them to hand it over to a committee of 5 members. So the Peace Prize is given out by Norway. And it's quite interesting, actually, why, we don't actually know why Alfred Nobel would give the Peace Prize to Norway, but we can make an educated guess. And so Norway was actually governed by Sweden at the time when Alfred Nobel died. And Norway didn't have its own military or even foreign ministry. It was all done by the Swedish, and Sweden was at the time the most powerful of the Scandinavian countries and a player on the political arena in Europe. And it's likely that Alfred Nobel wanted to keep the Peace Prize away from politics, from becoming a political tool, and handing it over to Norway, which was really innocent, with a very remote military back. We have to go all the way back to the Vikings to for Norway to have any military power. And so it was likely, and Norway also, the Norwegian government had shown quite an interest in the peace movement at the time. So it is likely that he wanted Norway, that it felt that it would be more secure for the Peace Prize to be given out by a more neutral country like Norway. Now, with in hindsight, what we've seen has happened with the Peace Prize, it's quite ironic because Norway today is anything but neutral, and as we can see, as you said, also Gandhi didn't receive it. There are some glimpses there. There are people that absolutely should have received it, that fulfilled all of Alfred Nobel's criteria in his last will, but didn't receive it. And then you have a number of recipients that are far from peace champions that have received it. So it's really quite shocking when you start digging into the prize and the recipients to discover what the Peace Prize has become.
Absolutely, and I think you're right in what you say. There's some of the choices of the recipients of the prize are astounding, and especially those that have won the prize, and it turns out later on they've become the most horrible of dictators, right? And I wonder then, what's gone wrong with the sort of Norway selection, the committee itself, it often seems to make wholly political decisions, which are totally lacking in any impartiality. So I wonder, do you think the founder would look at it now and think, well, this has turned out quite the opposite of what I had hoped it would?
In my opinion, Alfred Nobel would be turning in his grave, if he knew what was going on. The problem with but really, Alfred Nobel made, you can say that he made a mistake in giving the prize to Norway, but that was an honest mistake. The mistake that he made, secondly, was that he wasn't more specific in his criteria on how they were selecting the committee. Because what has happened is you have the Norwegian Parliament filled with politicians who are selecting the 5 members of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. So what they have done from day one is that they have selected politicians, or now former politicians, to be on the committee. They stopped selecting active politicians back during World War II, just because of the obvious dangers for Norway with respect to Germany, and conflict of interest there. But what they have done is that they have put retired politicians, and it's really given out as a pat on the back. A thank you for your long and loyal service to the political party. So, which means that these are professional politicians. Most of them have never done anything else than being politicians, and they remain loyal to the political party and the government long after they retire. So and we see that most of the winners are in line with the Norwegian government's views and policies.
Now, as I mentioned in that introduction, Trump, I argue, should have probably won the prize given the impressive foreign policy moves he made in that one single term, and even in 1 year of the presidency, which I realise is a prerequisite, isn't it? It has to be within that year that you've done things which would fit in with the I guess the conditions of winning the prize. Do you think, given that President Obama did it, and he turned out to have a pretty shocking foreign policy record as far as getting America involved in all sorts of interventions or lack thereof as far as peace is concerned, so many red lines turned out to be not quite as robust as he might have suggested they would be as far as Syria and the likes of those states are concerned. If we consider Trump's record very, very impressive, why then was he not even sort of a consideration? Is there a sort of conservative bias because of the politics of a state like Norway, which does tend to be sort of left liberal, isn't it?
Yes, you have a great point there. Just to go back to the criteria of the Nobel Committee and of Alfred Nobel. So the prize is supposed to go to work done in the year preceding the award. Now that actually is rarely followed by the committee. It's usually goes to a person's achievements, for a long period of time. And then all of the prizes, all of the 5 prizes are supposed to go to work conferred, for the greatest benefit on mankind. Those 2, the preceding year and the greatest benefit on mankind, those criteria apply to all of the 5 prizes. Now, there are 4 criteria that apply only to the Peace Prize, and that is that the winner is supposed to be a champion of peace, having done the best work for fraternity between nations, the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and finally for the holding and promotion of peace congresses. If you are to look at these criteria objectively, President Trump actually fulfills pretty much all of them. He, his work was, he was not nominated for this year's for the prize of 2020. He wasn't nominated. He's been nominating now for this year, so 2021. So we'll see what happens this year. But he definitely fulfills the preceding year criteria. And he has his agreements has definitely been for the fraternity, been beneficial for the fraternity between nations. Also, he's pulled out military troops from the Middle East, right? So he has definitely worked to reduce standing armies, and he has, so he's filled the criteria. Now, the only question that remains, at least in the view of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, is President Trump a champion of peace? And the way, at least the political elite in Norway, and I would say in most European countries as well, is that they see his leadership style and rhetoric as divisive. that he has created a deeply divided United States. Now, you can argue that it was already divided before. It's just that a lot of things have been stirred up now. Is it President Trump? Is it, because of COVID? I think there's a lot of things going on. But a lot of that has come up to the surface during his presidency. So one can argue that he hasn't been the most, and especially now with the recent, the attack on Capitol Hill, is he responsible for those attacks or not? I mean, these are the questions that come up when you are to decide whether a person is a champion of peace, which is more of a general term than the specifics. Now, he has done specific things that definitely qualify him. And if you look at these criteria objectively, he has definitely done a lot more than President Obama did to deserve the Peace Prize. President Obama, when he won the Peace Prize in 2009, when he was nominated, he had been in office less than 2 weeks. He hadn't even, began doing any of the things that the committee actually claimed he had done. So, and I believe that this was an embarrassing moment for him, because he didn't believe he deserved it. And I believe it was a very, tough decision. Should I receive it, or should I refuse to receive it? What do I do here? Now, he did go and, he received his award. But he also said in his, in his speech that he didn't believe he deserved it, and that nobody could expect that the United States would pull out all the troops and that war would be eliminated during his presidency. So he did put these signals out there. Now the question is. And some experts in political history believe that the fact that he did receive the Peace Prize prematurely actually made his all the things that he wished to accomplish during his presidency more difficult, because the opposition, the very conservative opposition in the United States, would work then harder against him because of their possible prejudices against the Nobel Peace Prize. So it might be that it was even more difficult for Obama to, and he did, he did, reduce some of the troops on the ground in the Middle East, but then he, launched all these drone attacks, and which you can say is actually even greater unfairness to, in warfare than having troops on the ground. So he absolutely was not a peace champion, according to Alfred Nobel's will. And the people who nominated Trump definitely have a point in that he has done a lot more than Obama and other people to deserve the prize. Now, will he? Probably not, I would say.
Yeah.
Knowing that.
That's almost guaranteed, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Why do you think people who actually brought peace then, or including perhaps President Trump, or contributed at least significantly to it? I mentioned Gandhi, Oskar Schindler even, who saved the lives of 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust. Many people who peacefully brought an end to even the likes of communism in Czechoslovakia, Pope John Paul II, who played such a pivotal role in the dismantling of communism as well, they all never won the award. Do you think there is a sort of political bent to it where actually these ideologies like communism are viewed more favourably than perhaps fascism would definitely have been? Because wasn't Hitler nominated for the prize at one point as well?
Hitler was nominated, and that is,
it's
such
extraordinary.
It's extraordinary, and borders to ridiculous. And Stalin was nominated as well. He was nominated. Now, apparently, Hitler was nominated by a Swedish politician as a joke. It turns out now it will, and of course, none of these, three, Stalin, Hitler, or Mussolini, won the Peace Prize. But it still will be part of the Peace Prize record,
Yes.
or
Yeah,
eternity.
the
So
nomination's still in the history books, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I would argue that there is a left-leaning bias, for sure. And also, when the thing with the Peace Prize is that we know nothing really about their process, how they work, how thorough they are
Well,
in
that's another question as well.
yeah,
How does that process actually work? Is there any transparency at all, or is it just all smoke and mirrors?
all smoke and mirrors. It's they hide behind this secrecy, which
Mm.
is they have created in the bylaws that all decisions, processes, any notes, anything is supposed to be held secret for 50 years after the fact. Now, what we know through leaks. When committee members resign and then talk to the press, and so we know little, but it's all this secrecy does not really belong in a modern institution where we are seeking to increase trust in leadership. And so that is a big problem. And so back to your question
Mm.
before, why didn't all these, Gandhi and Pope Jean Paul II win the Nobel Peace Prize? Well, what it looks like is that the Norwegian government at the time had another interest that served them more, and that served Norwegian politics and government more than they did. And also, there is when you look at the Pope Paul II, how he really obtained what he obtained. He didn't obtain it through direct negotiations between the parties. It was really a peace that came from building up people's motivations and strength from within, building their belief system that they could be free if they really wish to be free. And that doesn't really, it doesn't really belong anywhere. Although it's those, I believe those are fabulous reasons. I mean, for Steve to he was a true peace champion. Really, all of this, what he accomplished, the fall of the wall, and communism and the Cold War, ended because of what he did, and greatly participated to accomplish. And when it comes to Gandhi as well, what's not to be neglected is Norwegian foreign policy and interests in the safety of Norway. Great Britain has always been an important ally, as the United States is an important ally to Norway, and making sure that our borders are safe. We have a lot of U.S. soldiers on Norwegian territory to protect us from the Russians. They have been there since the end of World War II. Great Britain is an extremely important ally, and Gandhi opposing Great Britain, did that play a role in we do not want to anger the British?
That's an interesting. That's very because Unni, I wonder then how do we. Because I can understand why Norway would be scared about making decisions like that, right? Because they don't want to lose that very vital security asset.
Yeah.
But how then do we depoliticize the prize? How can it be? Is it sort of a lost cause? Because everything that you're telling me, which is, when I was pouring through the pages of your book, it's such a revelation to me. I knew none of this. I was so ignorant to all of this. And now I do know it. And I dare say that many viewers at home watching this will think the same thing. I'm going to be much less likely to, well, I probably was after Obama won the prize, to be honest with you, 2 weeks in, but I'll probably be much less likely to take the prize seriously So how, with that in mind, with that understanding of the sort of damage to the reputation of the prize that's been done over recent years, how can it be depoliticized and sort of brought back into that neutral, being that neutral arbiter of those who've been champions of peace around the globe?
Such a great question, Darren. Thank you. It's and that is what really excites me and motivates me, because my book is not meant to sort of be sort of a bashing of Norway and the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. I do believe they have sort of gone off course. They have lost the intentions and motivations of Alfred Nobel, the founder of the Peace Prize. They have, gotten lost themselves in their political leanings and world. And I believe that when Parliament selects the members of the committee, there are three things that needs to happen. So first of all, politicians do not belong on the committee. This is not supposed to be a thank you for a long and loyal service to our political party type of prize. They should select committee members who have a proven record and interest in the peace movement, right? So that should be created. Whether they are Norwegian or not doesn't really matter to me anyway, but they should have a proven record of and interest in the peace movement. Mm-hmm. Also, this number two is I do believe that we need an updated criteria and guidelines for the committee to follow. That is, when Alfred Nobel established a peace prize, it's more than 100 years ago. Our society has evolved since, and so maybe we need to include. Now, the committee actually has strayed from the criteria of Alfred Nobel and included people who are, bankers and working for the environment, work for environment, humanitarian prizes. All of these are actually not included in the criteria of Alfred Nobel's will, so they are outside the scope of the will as it is today. Now, I believe there is need for to define peace. What is peace? What type of work should be part of the consideration? And the way the committee does it today, without any public criteria, is that we just don't know. So sometimes we get the feeling that the committee is saying, "Oh, this year we believe this, is a good cause, and we'll just call it peace," right? So there's so we need to have a clear definition of the term peace and what type of work should be included in peace. And the third thing that needs to change is to make this whole process transparent. Also make the nomination process transparent, so that when people are nominated, we know not just because it's leaked to the press, but we know who nominated, what were the reasons, and so that when where there are experts around the world and they see that somebody's nominated and they have information about that person or organization that may not be publicly known, they can actually come forward and give the committee this information. Yeah. Because today we have no clue. We have absolutely no clue how thorough the committee is in their research on certain candidates. For example, in 2011, they selected former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She was one of the winners that year. Now, she won the Nobel Peace Prize because she was the first female president in an African country. And because she had been on the cover of Time magazine and named as the most influential woman and powerful woman in the world. But when you look at her history, she was part of President Charles Taylor's civil war and rebellion that led to genocide. She was the one who raised the funds for his operations and genocide in Liberia. And that is not a peace champion, in my view, and certainly not in Alfred Nobel's view.
So it strikes me then that sort of handing out awards just because this person was the first female, and it's sort of like you're handing out the prize just to appear more sort of woke and progressive. When another point I think. Similar to the one you've just made, the United Nations is always, it seems to be such a favourite of the Peace Prize Committee. And not only was the 2020 prize awarded to the UN's World Food Programme for its effort to combat hunger as a weapon of war, but the UN has won the Nobel Peace Prize no fewer than 17 times, including to the UN peacekeeping forces, which won in, I think, 1988. And despite the scandal surrounding the involvement in sexual violence against women in the places that they were mandated to protect, for example. And I wonder then, is it because, given that the point, my first thought, Unni, was that this is because Norwegian politicians deem the UN to be a counterpoint to being dependent on big bad America, big bad Trumpies America? Or is it just because it seems more woke and progressive to give it to these UN bodies who, I don't know, might be more diverse or whatever? What is it that's sort of underpinning these decisions? Do you see it being sort of an attempt to just seem liberal and lovely and hand out prizes based on immutable characteristics such as sex, such as race, and all the rest of it?
You're raising a great point there, Darren. I think it's a little bit of both. The UN is definitely there's a love affair between the Norwegian government and the UN. Norway, as a small country, sees the UN as the one organization able to counter the power of the United States. And we see that, very clearly right after the attacks on the U.S., Al-Qaeda attacks after 9/11 in 2001, when George Bush declared that he would go to war against Islamic terrorism. The Norwegian Nobel Committee then gave the Peace Prize just couple of months after to the UN, Kofi Annan and the UN, and they said very clearly there that it was that the UN has to have, you cannot go to war or declare war on any country or organization without first going through the UN system. And then after that, we see a row of prizes, not only to the UN, to several UN organizations there too, but to all these people and organizations that have clearly stood up and been vocalizing their opposition to the Bush administration in the US. And what's really quite funny, actually, is that the Nobel Committee in Oslo are so arrogant because they believe that they answer to no one and they can do whatever they like, is that they are so arrogant that they even say it as a explanation in their speeches, in their public speeches, saying that this year we're giving the award as a slap in the face to the Bush administration. And they did this for several years in a row. And the prize to Obama in 2009 was the last one of these prizes.
Yeah.
I mean, Obama got it because he expressed, and he personified the opposite of George W. Bush, right? So he was the last one of these prizes. So it's very clear to me that there is this idealism.
It goes back to your point earlier about needing transparency and accountability, and I think that's sort of what's missing from much of the decision-making processes of these multinational, massive organizations. And, that's, I think the reason why in the United States of America, for example, the support of especially the Trump base of being anti-UN is because for a long time they've sort of tried to paint America as the bad guys. And actually, if we consider the continent of Europe, for example, it's American taxpayers that are paying for the protection of that continent. Yeah. Given everything that you've said about how the prize can be reformed, I wonder if, to end, you might sort of sum up how, I guess, why it's important that the Nobel Peace Prize, because some people watching this might just say, well, Unni, I agree with everything that you've just said. I'm going to buy your book. I agree with what you've said. And I just think we should get rid of the damn prize. It's useless. It's no use to man nor beast. It's unaccountable. It's smoke and mirrors. It's politically corrupted, perhaps. And I wonder, because you're an advocate of it and you think, actually, I'm writing this book because and I don't wish to speak on your behalf, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm writing this book because I want to raise awareness of this issue and save the prize from itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why then is it so important in your eyes for the prize to sort of take on board those 3 steps that you addressed earlier and actually become a real catalyst for genuine change and be an inspiration, I guess, for political leaders and institutions to strive for the peace, transparency that our wrecked and lost world, I think, probably does need?
Absolutely, Darren. I sincerely hope and I believe that institutions and leadership can do better. Because we see an historic level of distrust in our institutions. We see this with the UN, and rightly so, rightly so, in our governments. And I believe that, and people are right to be angry because there's so much wrong with our systems and the way things are run, and we see that. And people should be angry, and we need change. We need to restore the trust in leadership globally, and we need to restore trust in the Nobel Peace Prize, because I believe the Peace Prize has an important role to play in restoring trust. Because the Peace Prize, what is it basically? It's a small thing, but it's also a beacon of hope. They're supposed to select winners, leaders that actually we can look up to for inspiration. Leaders that we want to follow, who we trust have our best interests at heart, not just the political elite, but all of us. The people on the ground, actually all of us tax-paying citizens, right? All of us. And so when we find that we cannot even trust the Peace Prize because the winners are part of some political plot, right, to keep the status quo, it's so important also that we know that when someone wins the Nobel Peace Prize, they didn't win it because they have the right gender or skin color or political leanings. We know they won because they are a true peace champion, having, fulfilled all the criteria of a peace champion. And so I believe that this is going to help us with this really polarized and isolated population that we see here, which has stopped believing in leadership in general. And that is, and when human beings, when we stop believing in our leaders, then there's all sorts of other, separation, loneliness. We see that, loneliness is actually a huge epidemic, actually, pandemic in the world. More than 40% of American adults suffer from loneliness. We see this. This is according to the U.S. General Surgeon, Dr. Vivek Murthy. We see when we feel separated, fragmented, and dehumanized, we dehumanize those who are different from us. And many of those people turn to extremism. And even if we don't, we risk becoming numb and indifferent of us or others. Yeah, exactly. And therefore, we are contributing to creating conflicts, riots, and war. The Nobel Peace Prize, by keeping the selection process a secret, by selecting state leaders who keep up the status quo, and by arrogantly justifying winners as a slap in other people's faces. They're staying, loyal to political and all the the financial interests and political interests, everything that Alfred Nobel was against.
It's sticking two fingers up at the little man, the little taxpayers around the world, and keeping close the political and cultural elites, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a beautiful way to end. So thank you very much for giving up your time. There's a link in the description to the book. I would urge everyone to check it out because it really has opened my eyes. So thank you so much, Unni.
Thank you, Darren. It's been a pleasure.
Now, I'm sure you'll be absolutely desperate to hit that subscribe button as well, and I will see you next time. Reasoned relies upon grassroots donations from people like yourself that want us to continue producing our high quality, free thinking content. So please do consider clicking the link and donating, no matter how big, no matter how small, because it really does ensure that we can keep on keeping on.